He considered the risks, and then he went back anyway. The entrance to the tavern was at the end of an alley, in a part of the city built from ancient grey metal and stone, a tangle of overhung streets and narrow walkways. This was a long way from the crystal towers and shining avenues of Zenazor Quarter. The alley burrowed right underneath a huge foundry, its last few yards sloping down under cover to the door with 3 coins embossed on its surface. He had found this place a few weeks ago on one of his occasional random expeditions into the industrial districts of the city. It was important that he never visited the same place twice, to avoid drawing attention to himself. 4 times was folly. The tavern was full of metalworkers who had come off from a shift at the foundry about half an hour ago, long enough to have settled to their drinks and conversation so that the room was comfortably full, but not with people clamouring to be served all at once. Jay fitted himself to a table against the wall in the far corner of the bar, where he could observe the room and the servitors. She did not notice him for some time. He didn't make any signal to attract her attention, since he was content to watch her as she moved amongst the customers, dipping forward over the tables to deposit their drinks and food, dispensing smiles with the berry juice and yasha. Eventually, she caught his eye, and her smile became direct. She was called back to the serving table and caught up in a flurry of orders for a few minutes longer. Jay let his gaze drift away from her and around the bar. The clientele was made up almost wholly of workers from the foundry above, and the majority of them seemed to belong to the same clan. Though their clothing was heavy and simple, many wore an emerald green cloth tied around the waist or neck. To blend in, he was wearing a plain, old, nondescript servant's tunic, a cloak of rough, worn fabric, and a leather apron to give the impression that he had just come from some nearby forge. It would not be a good idea to adopt the clan insignia, however. He had received some incurious glances when he had first walked in here, but on his subsequent visits nobody had taken any notice of him at all. The regulars of the 3 chakra didn't seem completely unaccustomed to strangers. "Ral? Back again?" Jay looked round, casually. "Of course. How could I stay away?" "You've managed to stay away perfectly well for the past 3 weeks. "You've been counting, then?" "No." She glanced back over at the serving table, where her mother, a stout, stern, watchful woman, was filling tankards in a row. "What can I get you?" "What I had last time." "You expect me to remember?" "Yes, I do." This got a smile, and he watched her go back to the serving table with an intoxicating sense of danger and desire. He had no doubt she was the kind of woman who would yield. His mind raced over the logistics of the operation. There was her mother at the serving table, watching the interaction while attempting to appear unobservant. The girl was likely to live under her parents' roof, being unmarried, and the house of a servant cast innkeeping family would be modest. Impossible to find a secure place there. Equally, it was impossible to take her back to his own apartment, since it was almost certainly under surveillance. And anyway, he liked to keep some things simple. Perhaps there was a storeroom in the cellars underneath the inn where they could go after closing time, if she could invent some reason for staying behind. Even thinking through the possibilities was almost enough to overwhelm his reason with longing. Usually it wasn't worth working out how long it had been, but he knew anyway. 13 years without a real woman, a Taysan woman. It was so close now that he could just reach out and take it, if he could create the opportunity somehow. When she brought his drink, apple juice, cloudy, he asked, "Does your mother serve all evening?" "Yes, all evening, every evening." "How about you?" "I'm her apprentice, so I serve when she serves." "I get the feeling the duties of your apprenticeship don't include lingering too long over any particular customer." She looked conscious, and then she smiled. "Perhaps not, but after we close for the night, I'm off duty." Jay leaned forward and held her gaze, and was about to reply when he spotted his personal servant, Ral, ducking through the entrance to the tavern. In a quick moment, he assessed whether it was worth trying to effect an escape. There was little chance of success. As soon as he moved, he would make himself known, and Ral was standing by the only public entrance to the room. He put his tankard down and sat back, waiting to be found. Ral drew more than one glance as he made his way deliberately through the cloud. In his fine weave tunic, he was dressed too much unlike the tavern's usual customers to be anything other than conspicuous. Jay could do nothing but suffer under the feeling of exposure as Ral approached him. "Excuse me, sir. You're wanted urgently, and apparently you forgot your communicator." "I forgot my communicator because I don't always want to be found." Ral bowed and glanced at the girl, and bowed again. She hesitated, her glance flicking between them, then returned Ral's greeting formally and moved away. Jay took one defiant swig of the glass of apple juice. "All right, Ral, don't worry. I know you've got orders." Ral inclined his head, an abbreviated bow. Jay left the tavern without looking back to catch her eye. There was no point. He would never see her again. There was never any decent sense of time in Tayshan headquarters. Artificial light blazed day and night in rooms and corridors that had no crystal walls or windows to the outside world, and even in the deadest hours of night there were people striding about. Nonetheless, Jay sensed a difference in the atmosphere as soon as he stepped out of the lift on the uppermost floor. Late as it was, there was a subliminal tension and alertness in the air. There was nothing subliminal about the 2 Star Rider guards flanking General Salthar's door, decked out in full regalia and wielding extended farstaffs. As Jay approached, they snapped to attention and crossed staffs across the doorway. "Oh, come on," said Jay, using a sword-bearer intonation. "Whoever your superior is, he's waiting for me in there. Do you really think the Tayshan would just let anyone wander onto the premises?" They ignored him. He was well aware that he was dressed like a metalworker, and suddenly it mattered. In the eyes of these 2 young pompous idiots, he could be actively ignored. Jay crossed his arms and leaned against the wall opposite, only vaguely and theoretically calculating the practicality of taking them both out, unarmed as he was. It would make too much noise, and would embarrass Salthar, which could of course be seen as a bonus, but they probably had guns hidden somewhere in all that metalwork, which would make the exercise unnecessarily dangerous. "Well then," he said, "we could be here all night." The impasse lasted about 2 minutes. Then one of the guards looked uneasy and muttered into his communicator. He frowned and stood aside as the door was opened from within. Jay flicked back the guard's staff lightly with his finger as he passed. The outer chamber of Salthar's suite of offices was one of the few rooms in the building which did have natural light, a crystal wall overlooking the River Leda. By day it offered an impressive enough view, and at night the city below twinkled like stars. The noble standing by the wall admiring it was known to Jay only by reputation. Lord Eldo of Methuli, hereditary member of the Circle of 12. He had been prepared for grandeur, but not quite this. Salthar looked stressed. Jay felt a coldly disapproving glare boring into him. He bowed with proper humility to Lord Eldo and waited to be abused. "This is your man?" said Lord Eldo. "I don't think so. I need somebody to go in there and get close to Corisval. Close on a level that will allow him access to his work. This menial is unsuitable." "This menial," said Salthar, "is my best operative, external and internal. His ability to impersonate other castes is unrivalled and utterly convincing. He can also ingratiate himself with practically anyone and deceive them without a qualm. There's no one else. These are my agents, my lord. I know them." Though his voice sounded controlled, Jay could hear the strain of a long and difficult conversation in his tone. Jay met the noble's eyes, deliberately flouting protocol. "And you trust him?" said Lord Eldo, staring directly at Jay but still addressing Salthar. "I trust him to do his job." "Very well. Brief him. Keep me informed by personal messenger. You know how important this is, Salthar." He strode out, and Jay bowed again as he swept by. Once the door was closed, Salthar let out a breath and lowered himself deliberately into his desk chair. "Thanks for the character reference," said Jay. "In the name of the Empress, Jal, what are you dressed like that for? The one occasion I need you to appear respectable and you look like a country blacksmith." "I am a country blacksmith, sir." Salthar glared. "Mess this one up and you will be." He gestured to the other chair and handed over a photo slate. Jay flicked through the images, all of which showed a middle-aged sword-bearer of venerable, stately appearance. "Retired General Corisval, ostensibly of Caro," said Salthar. "In fact, he took his wife's clan. Originally, he was a blade of vengeance. Caro is the principal sword-bearer clan in Parmoa." "Excellent. I could do with some sun. Review this biography and come up with a reason for an extended visit to the former general, preferably as someone with special knowledge of Earth. You're to get close to him and find out what you can." "About what?" "About his former and possibly his present connections and activities. I can't tell you more than that." "Because you don't know any more? Or because of court squeamishness about internal affairs?" "That's enough, Shal. Whatever it may have been necessary to say to Lord Eldo, I am not at all sure you're right for this or any other internal mission." "Then why are you sending me? Why not Mizal? She'd have the old man eating out of her hand. Is she busy elsewhere?" "No. She's dead." Salthar stood up abruptly, scraping the chair sharply on the floor. Jay stared at the pyramid-shaped paperweight on the desk, noticing that it cast a rainbow prism of light. This investigation is being driven from the highest quarters. You saw that yourself. There can be no delay. And for the sake of everyone's honour, there can be no mistakes. Afterwards, Jay, I want you to go after her killer. He turned from the window wall. Report to me in an hour with a convincing cover story, and I'll get some credentials set up for you. You're to leave for Parma as soon as practicable. Take your servant. And Charles, investigating Coruscant does not involve seducing his wife, his daughter, or any other female member of his household. Do I make myself perfectly clear? Not yet inclined to speak, Jay nodded. It's best you don't know everything, but I can tell you that from the suspicions that attach to Coruscant, anyone close to him could be implicated, and any one of them could be dangerous if your cover is blown. Now, go and use your imagination. The briefest overview of Coruscant's file was enough to suggest to Jay that he could represent himself as a scribe-cast scholar wanting to use the famous ancient library attached to the Caro ancestral home. For the rest of the allotted hour, his imagination worked against him, suggesting in detail all the many ways a young combat-trained woman could die.